So, about a year ago, I uploaded a video talking about why FNaF 3 was, in my opinion, the best FNaF game in the entire series. 1 year later, and that video has blown up quite a lot. Thanks, Security Breach. And there's been a big trend I've noticed in the comments. That trend being that many people who watch my video share the opinion that while many of my points were quite solid towards the game, they felt that the gameplay of FNaF 3 was very lacking in many departments. Now, this is a fair point to make, and is definitely something I should have mentioned the first time I talked about this game. So, that's what I intend to do today. Now, in this video, I'm not necessarily trying to prove that FNaF 3 has the best gameplay in the series, but instead, I'm just going to talk about why I personally really enjoy playing it. Now, before I get into a lot of the finer details of FNaF 3's gameplay, there was one big thing I want to discuss about it. That being the way the cameras were integrated into this game. In the previous installments of each FNaF game, I felt like, although looking for the characters on the cameras was one of the series' main selling points, there wasn't much in the other games that really made it necessary. In FNaF 1, you only really need to check on Foxy's camera in order to view his progress, and maybe Freddy if he's getting close to you. The same problem exists in FNaF 2 to an even larger scale with the puppet, only really being needed as a way of keeping the music box wound up. I feel these problems exist because the gameplay in FNaF 1 and 2, while both being very fun and stressful in their own regards, isn't built around the cameras being used the way Scott wanted them to be. A huge part of the reason why FNaF 3 works so well for me is because it's clear that when Scott made it, he made it with the intention of making the cameras what the gameplay would focus on completely. By removing any way to defend yourself once Springtrap has arrived at your office door, Scott made it so that constantly looking for him became a necessary part of anyone's strategy to survive. This way of utilizing the cameras in the core gameplay of FNaF 3 always made it stand out more to me than the other games, as looking for the characters trying to get into your office was always the part of the original trilogy I found the most fun and stressful. Now the thing is with this kind of system is that it only works if the threat you're keeping track of is a challenging one, which leads me to my next and main point. One major problem I see that a lot of people have with FNaF 3 is the fact that there is only one character which hunts you down throughout the game. I can understand this criticism, especially with the game coming after the chaotic experience that was FNaF 2, but I feel there being only one true threat in the game makes playing it an entirely unique and enjoyable experience. Sure, there aren't 11 characters you have to constantly keep track of, but what I find so appealing about the FNaF 3 style of gameplay is that it feels more like a personal experience. You spend so much time over the course of the game watching and keeping track of all the different things Springtrap can do that you begin to almost develop a relationship with how he functions. You learn from every single death and become better at dealing with all the little nuances of the map and the single threat trapped inside it with you. And I can tell that this kind of gameplay was what Scott wanted from FNaF 3 because he quite literally stated it in his interview with Dawko regarding the game.
I knew that Part 2 should be chaotic. Part 2 should be, a lot more chaotic than the first one. It should be just crazy. It should be overwhelming panic. Mm-hmm. And then I also knew, even at that time, before as I was working on Part 2, I knew that 3 should be a very personal experience. It should be the opposite of what 2 was. Part 3 should be kind of one-on-one. And I knew that Part 4 should be...
Springtrap feels so good to deal with as a threat to me, because once you learn how each of his mechanics work, you can integrate them into your gameplay to survive later nights. Things like listening for him in the vents to reset valuable systems, keeping track of how many times you hear him moving on the map in between system resets, and making sure to preemptively seal vents in locations you want to lure him to all become part of the gameplay cycle once you become familiar with how each of these mechanics work. Now, enough about Springtrap. Let's talk about the other threats you have to deal with in this game, the Phantom animatronics. These characters are the ones I hear the most complaints about regarding the game, and I can definitely understand why. Having a threat in the game which can jump scare you without killing you is something not many people find appealing in these games, making it feel even more like a jump scare fest than the other games in the series. This can definitely be seen as a glaring issue with the game. However, I find myself enjoying the Phantom characters. I like them because they feel like an integral part of what makes FNaF 3 so stressful. Each time you get jump scared by one of the Phantom characters, it causes these brief moments of pure panic as you try to get your bearings again. The time you spend trying to repair the damage done by a Phantom animatronic is time which you can always hear Springtrap making his way towards you. Every single second you spend doing something other than luring Springtrap away from your office could mean death in FNaF 3. And I love the Phantom characters because messing up against them forces those stressful scenarios upon the player. Now, with my two main points out of the way, I'd like to just go ahead and talk about some little things I really like about playing FNaF 3 compared to other games. Yeah, so this is the section I dedicated to just some random little things about the game I really enjoy, but I can't really include in a full section on their own. The first one being just how the game starts. FNaF 3 has a lot of different mechanics compared to 1 and 2, and I really appreciate how those mechanics are able to be taught to the player in a very safe environment. By having this as a feature, the game allows you to settle in and have a grasp at what you're doing by the time an actual threat gets thrown into the mix. Another really little detail I like about the game is the fact that the camera doesn't take up your entire screen. By having a tiny amount of space dedicated to still being able to see the office when you're flipping through cameras, it can create this very paranoid feeling, like you're going to see something entering your office from the side that's still visible. And sometimes that exact scenario does end up happening. It doesn't really matter all too much. It's just something I found pretty neat. Another smaller thing I really like is how you can use the map layout to your advantage if you know how it works well. Some examples of this include how you can lure Springtrap back towards Cam 2 if he's in your window, or how you can keep Springtrap from killing you if you lure him to Cam 1 when he's right at your door. And probably my favorite example of this is how you can actually lure Springtrap between camera 8 and camera 5 since they are actually connected to each other in the layout. This is another really small part of the game I really enjoy just because it feels cool to be able to use your knowledge of the map to keep yourself alive just a little bit longer than you would under normal circumstances. And I think one last small detail about FNaF that I really enjoy is just how the audio cues the game uses can be used as a strategy to survive the night. Once you have an idea of where Springtrap is on the map, you can pinpoint if he moves, how many times he moves, whether or not he moves into the vents or moves regularly purely using the audio cues. This makes it really convenient to keep track of Springtrap when you can't see him, like when you need to reboot any systems that go offline while trying to survive. I also really like how the ambience changes when Springtrap or one of the other Phantom characters is close to you, as it immediately warns you of any imminent threat before it arrives to greet you. That last part is something I really liked about FNaF 2 as well, and I'm really glad it was carried over to FNaF 3. So, to conclude, do I think that FNaF 3 has the best gameplay in the whole series? No, not necessarily. However, I do consider it my favorite for the reasons I talked about. While it isn't as chaotic or even as scary as some of the other games in the franchise, I enjoy it because it feels like a more personal experience, which really rewards you for understanding all the little aspects which make it work. If you disagree with me about that, great. I'd love to know which game you think is the best gameplay in the series, since I find discussions about it really fun. Anyway, I hope I was able to shed some light on a game which I still think is criminally underrated, and maybe even change your mind about some parts of the game which you may have viewed negatively. Hey, so this is post-video, post-editing, post-recording Pastura, just wanting to sit down and talk a little bit about just some random things regarding this channel and where I want it to go. First of all, I'm very surprised that this video just suddenly blew up out of nowhere. I was sitting here staring at it every now and then, and it had maybe a couple hundred views, and then suddenly I wake up and it has well over 10,000, and that's pretty great. I was not expecting that in the slightest. I kind of made this video as a way of celebrating that, and making sure that all the people who are suddenly gravitating to my channel have something new to watch, to know that they aren't just subscribing to a dead channel. And something I would just like you all to know is the fact that, like, I don't necessarily intend to just upload a bunch of FNaF videos. However, I do really like making these sort of commentary videos talking about different things I find interesting. So, if you're willing to stick around after this, I may not constantly upload different FNaF videos and essays and a million different videos on FNAF 3, but I will probably start uploading more regarding a bunch of different horror games and maybe some other pieces of horror media I really enjoy, as it's something I'm very passionate about. So, if you're willing to stick around for that, I'd really appreciate it, and I hope to see you whenever I make whatever I make in the future. Thanks a lot for any of the support I've already started receiving, and I look forward to seeing what I come up with next and seeing what you guys think of it.